Several years ago, while I was participating in the discernment process that marked the beginning steps towards my ministerial calling, one of the ministers who was assigned to the committee by the region made a comment that I thought was a little bit unusual at the time. They mentioned that most seminary educations do not teach all of the tools that make one a good minister. Most students come out of seminary with a good, strong theological training, but most of what a minister needs will be learned, as they say, on the job. I'm grateful that this minister didn't attend the Atlantic School of Theology for their training, because I've yet to see this actually be the case, and I think I've learned a great deal about the practice of ministry between our classes that have been taught at school and the practical assignments that are given out as part of our training. As a student of the United Church of Canada stream, a significant portion of that hands-on training that I mentioned comes as a part of the SME and the SMP courses that are compulsory. SMP and SME, they sound a lot alike and even look a lot alike, just one letter difference. For those students who are studying full-time on the campus during the fall and winters, there's a third option as well, which is the SFE. And I will humbly admit that in a moment of confusion, I completely mixed up all of these letters and somehow looked at the wrong book list 2 years ago when ordering books for class. I didn't return the books right away because I was hoping that at the time these books would come up on a later class assignments as part of the assigned text for reading. Alas, this has yet to be the case. One of the books I ordered accidentally was The Competent Pastor by Ronald D. Sisk. And since that time when I ordered it from Amazon, it sat lonely and abandoned on my bookshelf and has been there for far too long. But having read this work, it's easy to find reason for it being assigned as texts for the students who are beginning their field experience and learning what the calling of ministry means beyond that theological training of the classroom. It's so full of practical knowledge and wisdom that it's almost like an owner's manual for a pastor. The author Ronald Sisk served as a pastor for more than 20 years and currently is both professor of homiletics and Christian ministry, as well as the academic vice president and the dean at Sioux Falls Seminary in the United States. In addition to his calling as pastor and teacher, Ronald is also the author of a number of books and has had his work published as part of compilations. His many years spent serving pastoral charges are provided with fertile ground to harvest stories and illustrations from, several of which he shares throughout the book in very meaningful ways. As I read through the book the first time, I was struck by the straightforward way in which Ronald presents situations and then proceeds to analyze and suggest alternative ways in which those might have been resolved. While he does provide a strong biblical reasoning for each of these arguments, the reasoning and responses given show a very straightforward and practical sense of learning. The strength of this practical wisdom, which doesn't entirely rely on theological arguments, leads to this book being a great accompaniment to the traditional learning that one might anticipate of a seminary education. While it might be considered book learning, it does portray a sense of hands-on learning and experience as a result of the manner in which Ronald links these practical examples pulled from those many stories that he shares. While there are any number of strong points to this book, I think one of the strongest messages that is portrayed is of viewing ministry in a realistic manner. Many of the individual chapters in the book touch on self-care and limiting the work and tasks the pastor takes on with the hope for expectation of a more sustainable ministry being experienced. Ronald speaks about taking time away from ministry. Practices such as observing the Sabbath, even if that doesn't happen on a Sunday for the average working week of a minister. Of taking vacation days off, even sabbaticals that last a little bit longer than a typical vacation. The refreshing of the mind, the heart, and soul, which are the results of these, leads not only to a greater stamina and the durability of the pastor, but also a benefit to the congregation as an ever-expanding and growing pastor that it comes through these experiences. Another self-care process that is touched upon multiple times is that of creative ignorance, behaving as if a skill or talent is not strong in oneself in order to allow others to fill that need. As Ronald describes, creative ignorance has two primary benefits. It limits the additional tasks which the pastor takes on, and it inspires others to become a part of the life of the church, both of which are key areas for successful pastoral service, as it allows the pastor to concentrate on those areas that are both called to and they are best suited for. And at the same time, it creates space for the integration and the collaboration within the congregation. Once again, this echoes the realistic manner of ministry, primarily in that the pastor can't actually do everything every time. It's simply impossible to expect that, and it's unhealthy to attempt to do it for a long time. While this book does cover a wide range of practical aspects of ministry, this, in a way, is part of its weakness. Within the limited number of pages and with so many ideas being touched on, it's simply impossible to fully explore any of these in great depth. I wouldn't say that this is a case of the book being a jack of all trades but master of none, but rather that this book seeks to be an introduction to these ideas. And the suggested readings that are provided by the author throughout the book provide support for those who want to grow and expand their pathways in these areas. Within my own experience of ministry, limited as it is, I can see already many of the topics that Sisk speaks of in one way or another. For me, the most influential idea of this book has been to approach and reflect upon these incidents in different ways. Throughout the book, Sisk shows how the decisions of the pastor can affect the congregation, sometimes in unexpected ways. His story of the church bell is a good example. In this illustration that Ronald provides, Ronald, as a pastor of a church, finds that the bell needs some care. While he envisioned the bell on the top of the church being rung for services, members of the congregation told him that it was constantly needing attention and frequently was rusted and it stopped working. Even though it was against his better judgment and against the disapproving comments of his wife, he climbed up onto the roof and greased the bell. The surprising end of the story was a transformation in the congregation. Previously, they had explained away the bell and didn't even bother to try to keep it running because it kept returning to that rusty state. But after seeing the pastor up on top of the roof of the sanctuary, they quickly volunteered to take charge of its maintenance. While the point of the illustration in the book was about motivating others, it also shows a certain way of leading by example. And even though it seems to ignore the frequent admonishments about taking on too many tasks, the result of this story shows how we can inspire and transform others, and how that inspiration and transformation doesn't always come from expected sources. In the opening preface of this book, Sisk describes the inspiration of this writing as coming from an assignment that was given to students at Sioux Falls Seminary. This assignment required students to complete a self-assessment of 10 key areas, and the structure of the book is drawn from this, each chapter covering one of those specific areas of ministry. Ronald has throughout the book included a number of self-assessment checks. These show strong promise for not just a one-time check, but to be used periodically to reassess and to reevaluate. And while the questions are directed towards the self, the idea and concepts of these questions could easily be applied to others as a way to develop greater understanding. And I'm sure they will become a tool that will be used over and over again at my stay at Trillium United Church, and taken with me to wherever I might find myself afterwards. Reading any book, coming to the end, the ultimate question is, would I recommend this to somebody else? And I can honestly say that I would wholeheartedly recommend this book to others who are entering into ministry. It brings a wide variety of ministry experiences which might not be part of the traditional curriculum, and the author presents them in a way that is both easy to comprehend, but also invites one to explore further. While I wouldn't recommend this book as the sole tool for ministry, I just don't think any single volume could properly prepare a pastor for the calling. It does, however, provide a generous overview of some of the many areas of ministry which we might not think of on our own. And if it doesn't prepare us completely, it will at least give us some heads up and some time to prepare for when those things come in our own work. I hope you'll find this book in your library or in your local bookstore and give it a read, because I think it will help you out in your ministry as well. Thank you for spending a few moments of time to listen to me talk, and I hope to see you soon.